I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Hey, Ron here from The Truth About Addiction. Today we have a really special guest. Not only is she a special guest, she's also a special friend. I've known Angie for well over 30-something years. She was only 3 when I met her. And she's a good mate of mine, and she's got a beautiful story of recovery. And, yeah, just a good human being. So, Angie, welcome to The Truth About Addiction, darling.
Thanks, Ronnie. Love you.
Tell us your Angie story.
Okay. I'm born in 1964. We'll just start with that. And I'm born in Australia. So this is Australia, isn't it? Wide we talk about?
Worldwide, yes.
Or nationally, whatever. And I was born in a country town called Rockhampton. And back then, and my parents came from Greek background. You know, they came out in one of the first boats in the early and late 50s. So, they settled in a town called Rockhampton. Anyway, so for me, I have a lot of fond memories growing up, but one of the things that really kind of pivotally changed my life was that we were really the only WOG family in Rocky, and it was a predominantly Anglo, Aussies, that sort of thing. So, I started to feel different. Even before this, I always felt like I wasn't part of my family. I felt like that I didn't look like my family. And I was naughty, actually, like even before that, I was pretty naughty, like from a very young age. So I was always the problem in the family, and my family, my sisters were both very academic and, intellectuals, and I was not. So, and in the story of my family, if it was always, look at that person's child. It was comparing people's children, and if you weren't a lawyer or a doctor, you weren't really much in the Greek household. And that's the reality. And I certainly didn't want to be a lawyer, and I didn't want to be a doctor. I mean, I didn't even like school. And so when I went to school, I was left-handed, and I still am. And I broke my arm, and I remember they tried to make me right-handed. And so, like, I was already being told from the young age that I was a devil's child. So I acted like a devil's child. And because I didn't get the attention that, like, my sisters got because they were really good, the way I got the attention was by being naughty, being naughty. And I can remember running away from home as young as like 5 and 6 and 7 and doing naughty things, and knowing my mum and dad would come home and kill me. And I would just, and in Rocky back in those days, you could run away and, your parents didn't worry about you. Like if you weren't home, they didn't care. I think the first pivotal thing for me was, I think I was about 9 years of age, or maybe 8. And I went to a school in Rockhampton. The principal put my twin sister and I up on the stage, and my older sister was in the audience, and they called an assembly. And they called an assembly about me and my twin, which was, we don't want any of these. We had our hair up in a little bun at the top with the hair flowing out. And they said, we don't want any of these ethnic hairstyles in our schools. So, like, we were literally traumatized. And I actually shut that out of my memory for a really long time. And so what happened for me, and my sister who was in the audience couldn't do anything, like I said, the racism wasn't from the kids around me. It was from the principals and the teachers, that were like, these WOG kids, blah, blah, blah. My sister, from that moment, decided to become a lawyer because she could not believe the injustice, and she really felt for my sister and I. And my twin sister ended up becoming a school teacher because she never wanted other kids to be a part of this. But what happened for me was, from that moment on, I became more Aussie than Aussie. I didn't want to speak Greek. If my mother would speak Greek or my father, I'd be like, don't talk that wog shit around me. So I really just didn't accept that wog side of me. You know, I didn't embrace it. I didn't love it. I was just ashamed of it because it made me different to everybody else around me. And I already felt different before this, but I couldn't really recognize it to that point. You know, in hindsight, I said, because I've done step work, but at the time, I just couldn't. So then I rejected my family. I rejected my own twin sister. I rejected my family, you know, and I wouldn't even let my twin sister hang with me at school because she looked more wog. And, I'd hang with the cool chicks because that's what I wanted to be a part of. And, I just went on my merry way from there. I became someone that wasn't me. And, I just adapted so many, I became a chameleon. I became whoever you needed to me in that environment to be accepted, because that's all I wanted, was to be accepted and, loved and listened to, which predominantly came from my childhood before that, but I was just repeating the pattern in school. So it was interesting to see that I was repeating the pattern in high school. Anyway, so by the time we moved to Sydney, I think I was 11 or 12, and we moved to a suburb called Moorebank, which we used to call Less Bank. And I went to a high school there. And what I learned there was I learned how to talk out of the side of my mouth, do that Liverpool kiss, which is a headbutt. So I assimilated with what it was like in that world. And that's what it was like. So, and my sister was one of the, duckses of the school. My other twin was a dux of the school. I excelled in being the most naughtiest girl in the school. So I was constantly at the headmaster's office, being suspended, all of that sort of stuff. And the people I looked up to were, I don't know, like Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Morrison. Heroin was becoming a thing. I mean, look, I went through the usual progression. Like, I started smoking dope at a really young age. I'd hang with all the kids, the druggy kids. They were the cool kids. And, I got through school, but I got through school by having more front than David Jones. Like, I went through the normal progression of drugs and, pot, garden variety addict, pot, then alcohol. And I used to go out drinking, but the way I drank was I would black out and lots of shit would happen, and I could never control it. And and I would not remember anything I did. I did not like being out of control. I had no idea what happened, if someone fucked me or whatever. Like, I just had no idea. And if I had no idea, I thought that was a good night. When someone would say, do you know what you did last night? And I'd be like, nah. And like, they'd tell me, and as much as I'd cover it and go, yeah, there's the other part that would go into a real shame and connect with that shame that I already felt about who I was and where I'd come from. So that shame and that guilt about rejecting my family and all of that was getting bigger and bigger. So, by the time I found my drug of choice, which was heroin, it was a fucking relief. Like, I actually felt like I'd found nirvana. Like, I felt I can actually do life now with this. This is the way. And everything that I just didn't care, because before that I was so incredibly sensitive. I didn't know that. I cared about what other people thought of me. I formed my opinion about myself, about what you thought of me. And, I had no idea of anything else. So, by the time I found heroin, it was like, I did not give a fuck what you thought of me. I didn't even care anymore, because that care factor had left, and I'd found God in my own way.
Mm.
So, so you know, it was okay for a little while, and everything that I thought it had given me, like it gave me, I thought, a completeness, a wholeness. You know, this is the delusion or the illusion of heroin, that it gives you that warmth, that comfort, that fake comfort that you never got, you know. And it was the first time I'd ever felt that. But you know, everything that it gave me, it eventually stripped away. And what ended up happening was that eventually I did all those things that I would never do. You know, I started stealing. I stole from my family. I stole from my friends. I was shoplifting. I was doing B&Es. I was prostituting my body. I was, the list is endless of what I did. Credit card fraud, forginatas. Back in those days, there were checks. You'd get the check in the mail. We'd steal people's dole check. We'd cash it. I'd stick my, like this is what I did. And I remember at one stage, my mum and dad used to have a cash box in there. And my parents didn't know that this was happening. They were very oblivious to any of that. And neither did my twin sister, or my other sister had left home by then. She was at university, and my twin, she was at university as well. So I was just off on my own thing. And I'd left home at quite a young age as well. So, and my family was resentful at that, because Greek girls don't leave home. So, I was quite young. I moved to Newtown. So my sisters, my family were very resentful about what I was doing to the family. And, what will the neighbours think? What will the family think? Which is all the stuff I'd grown up with, which is I didn't care what other people thought, but I did deep down, but I didn't want to. So it was all still in me. So I remember my dad had a cash box, and he had, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 grand in there. I can't remember. And I, would drive from Newtown to my dad's place and just keep emptying out this cash box, because I knew where it was. And it started to get down to about 5 G's. And I remember going, mate, this is not going to do. So what I decided to do was I decided to do a fake robbery. So I broke a window, put a ladder, at my parents' place, stole the cash box, took the money, raided the place a little bit, made it look good. And then, the cops, my parents reported the robbery when they came. And for some reason, they turned up at the house 2 or 3 days later. And for some reason, I was there on the nod over eating a sandwich. And I remember the cops coming in and going, interviewing my parents, who could have done this. And I'm like falling asleep on my sandwich. And they go, do you have any idea, Angie? And I'm like, and I'm just, no, so I mean, they knew, but, like my parents were like, no. That was kind of the first parts of where the wheels started to fall off. And, I started to get jobs, and it would fall apart really quickly. If I was hanging out, I wouldn't turn up for jobs, or I'd start stealing stuff at work, or I'd start doing any of that stuff. So I remember letting my family into a moment of weakness, where I just thought, I can't go on like this, because, it's just hard to sustain it, and I ended up spending more time hanging out than getting on. And it was just starting to get really hard and really exhausting. And I hated having to do what I had to do. I hated having to fucking sleep with people I didn't want to sleep with and do the shit I had to do. And I was a product of, child sex abuse, from a very young age, which, anyway, so there was a lot of that in my story. So I repeated that in my history, from becoming a prostitute and having to go through the abuse through that as well. I, revealed it to my family, and initially they were there. My twin found it really hard to cope and couldn't be around me because initially they tried to help me withdraw. We went to a doctor and they gave me Rowies and Valleys and everything else. But of course, I would ring my mates, and they just didn't know how sneaky a junkie would be. They'd deadlock me into the house, they'd leave, and I'd ring my mate and say, just fucking leave the dope on the side of the window, blah, blah, blah. And I'd get on, so really they thought I'd be hanging out and clean by now. But, I still had a habit. So that wasn't working. And that went on for about another year till, I started to lose my family and friends, my family just went, we can't do this and we need help. And I remember the first, when my family said, when I sat down with them, because my sisters kind of kept it away from them that I was on heroin. And I remember the first time I sat down with my mum and dad and I said, look, I'm addicted to drugs. And I said, and they said, what kind? And I said, heroin. And they just went, the worst kind. And they just, whatever. I went into my first detox, and that was on the North Shore. And, when I went there, I treated it like a holiday because it was on the northern beaches. It was Mossman, actually. I won't mention the place, it's not around anymore, but they had a bike and it was a beautiful location. And we used to just call it Club Moss, and there was guys there. When you put down the heroin, I hadn't had a feeling in my body for such a long time. You couldn't have an orgasm on heroin. I don't know about any of you guys, but once you put the drugs down, it's like I can remember detoxing. The only time I didn't feel pain is when I was having an orgasm. Yeah. So at one point, I think I got up to 27 times in a day. And I just got so numb because it was like I just didn't know what else to do. Anyway, so I went to that. And I really didn't treat it seriously, but I got clean. And that's where I was introduced to meetings. And, I'm trying to cut it short because there's a lot in that. But so I got clean and, it wasn't really for the right reasons. When I started going to meetings, I was married to someone else when I got in there. We won't even talk about that. But, and the first thing I noticed when I went to meetings was fresh meat. Fresh, old, damaged meat, but fresh meat, that was the first thing I noticed. And, and that's what I went for, because anything to avoid me, drugs would avoid me, sex would avoid me. So all of that, but I had no idea about feelings, any of that. All I knew was hanging out stoned, angry. That's it. I didn't have any more of an idea of that. But, clearly something went through. And fast forward, I was in and out of the 90 days for a little while. And I ended up hooking up with a guy in the meetings and we started living together. And then I fell pregnant. And that was, and I didn't have that child because, I was ready to be a parent. I had that child because I thought maybe this will keep me clean. And you know what? It actually did, So in some ways I was really blessed, and the person I got with didn't stay clean. But, for me, she kept me clean for a while, and then I picked up after a little while. I don't know. The first time I think I picked up after about 2 years, and I smoked a joint, and I completely freaked out because I hadn't done it for a while. So I went back to meetings, and look, I've been in and out so often that it's really hard to say this, but for me, when I first got clean, I thought I'm only 23. I'm way too young. I just felt like my using was over, and total abstinence was no, my problem was heroin, not anything else, not coke, not tabs, not alcohol. But, I also, what I really found in the rooms was like I started to connect with people, which I hadn't for a long time. And there were people that were like me, and I felt like I'd found my tribe, and there was a crew of us that hung and, we just did things that I hadn't done for a long time, been at the beach, played tennis, just did stuff. And we were tight for a really long time. Anyway, fast forward. So I'd been in and out of recovery. I'd gotten another, I don't know, maybe 2 years up, and I relapsed, and it was only a little quick relapse. And one of my girlfriends in the fellowship introduced me to my partner, and he at the time had, I don't know, 13 years clean, which back 30 years ago, that was a lot of time up. And I was like, one day clean, and she introduced me to him, and we ended up marrying, and he became my high power. And he actually kept me clean. I mean, I had another child, we married, and he ended up keeping me clean for a little while. But again, it was not the suggested ways. I just went that way for a little while, and he kept me clean for a little while till it didn't. And then, I started, sneakily using, and I didn't, after probably, nearly, I think I got just before, I picked up about 2-3 months before my 5th birthday, and I got my 5th birthday cake, but I'd been using, and I was dishonest about it, and I didn't want to tell anyone. And sometimes I'd sneak to an AA meeting because no one would spot,
Yeah.
a junkie being pinned. They'd still give me a good pat on the back and go, "Good on you, mate." Anyway, so I was lying about it. I have a little shot during the day, going to meetings because there was so much shame. I felt I'm a failure. And, I remember one night I would have a little shot, and then when everybody would go to sleep, I'd put the kids to sleep, I'd have the big shot. And then one night I overdosed, and my ex-husband found me on the floor, the spoon, the gear all over the floor, and I just come to. And he's going, "What's all this?" And I've just come to. And the first thing I said was, "Someone's trying to set me up." It's like literally the first thing I did was deny. And I was a master manipulator. I could convince you that that was not mine, even though it was. So, of course, look, there's been a few recoveries since then, but I headed up to Byron, and of course I came up to Byron to go to a rehab up here. But, once I got to a detox and I got clean after a couple of weeks, I went, I don't need the rehab. I'm fine now. Just started doing meetings, of course, went the old way that I did. And in these recoveries, don't get me wrong, I went through the 12 steps a few times, but I was still doing it my way. And then when I came back to Sydney, I got involved. I was really always drawn to the dark side. I was always drawn to I suppose you could say gangsters, and I got drawn to them. And I got a divorce. I bought a place in Sydney, which was kind of in the middle of, where a lot of these people were, and I kind of got in with them. And I was so naive. I didn't even realize what I was doing, I just thought I'm not doing anything wrong, but I was working one of their clubs, and I got really close with them, and I was helping them do some other things, some marketing, because in getting clean in those other times, I got to do things with my life. My life opens up and expands. Like I didn't even explain any of that. That's what happens. You get a life. You get clean, you put the drugs down, your life opens up. It's not that little, if you had a stepwatch. I remember when I was using that stepwatch, I'd probably do 10,000 steps in a week. But if I was clean, like my life opened up, and that's what would happen. But as soon as I started using, it started closing up, and isolation for me was, a worse space for me to be in. Oh wow. Anyway, look, to cut a long story short, I ended up getting with these guys. And the last time I used heroin was that time in, you know, where my husband found me. And I got another couple of years up when I got back down to Sydney, and I was, you know, I bought a house and I wanted to pay the mortgage off. So I started, you know, doing things like, you know, dishonest shit in recovery to pay my mortgage, and I paid it, you know, but there was a price to pay for that, you know, like I started, you know, prostituting, I started doing, you know, little bits and pieces here and there, and that's what I did to survive. But in all of that, I got involved with these people thinking that they had some kind of moral compass or that I meant something to them, and I certainly didn't. I was just nothing to them. So, you know, look, shit went down, and I ended up getting on the Charlie, which, you know, because I knew not to ever use heroin again because I never wanted to withdraw. I knew what that was like. I'd never lost my mind before. I was using a lot of Charlie, like I'd be getting like a couple of 8 balls a day, and like an 8 ball could sit there all day if I didn't have any fits. So as long as I had fits, you know, and I didn't use with other people. I'd be like closing the doors and going, get the fuck away from me. This is my time. So I wouldn't be, I would just not sleep for days, and I just went insane and went into psychosis. And I lost my mind. I completely and totally lost my mind. And I still had my kids with me at this stage, and I put myself into a psych ward, which when that happened, I went, I'm insane. And there was a real embarrassment with that. Psych wards back then, there was a real stigma attached to crazy people, you know. So I was really ashamed. And so I remember speaking to a couple of mates in the fellowship, and shit go down with a couple of people in meetings that I was really close to. And just because you come to meetings doesn't mean like shit's all rosy. You're going to have fucking shit with people in the rooms. There was people that I wanted to fucking punch on with. There's people that I can do their fucking inventory really well. I'm sure they can do mine as well. But like, it just doesn't mean we go in there and it's all beautiful and we love each other and it's kindness, you know, principles before personalities. Yeah, it's all good in theory, but we're fucking fucked up human beings, you know. Like I was fucking broken when I got to those rooms, you know. So I didn't want to come back to the rooms. I was just over it, and I was, you know, because I had a issue with a couple of people in the rooms. I was like, I'm not going back to NA. That place is fucked, you know, just because it was like fuck 'em, blah blah blah. So after that, I actually didn't want to live anymore, and I wanted to kill myself every minute of every day, but I didn't, and I just knew the stuff that I'd learned in NA. I just stayed clean a minute at a time. I tried not to kill myself a minute at a time, all the stuff I'd learned in NA. And then I sold my house, and the money I sold my house with, I ended up learning how to do yoga, you know, learning energy medicine, Reiki, and I started teaching myself about holistic medicine. And I just started making an amends to my kids because I had just put my kids through a horrible time, and they'd seen me clean for most of their life. So my oldest had witnessed me shooting up. She'd also seen me overdose, which was pretty frightening for her. Anyway, so you know, on that trajectory, you know, like I was really disciplined. Don't get me wrong. I lived a life. I stayed clean for 11 and a half years. I gave up smoking. But I stayed away from men for 10 years and I was celibate. But like I kept my life really small, really protected. I just, you know, I did my yoga and meditated for 3 hours a day. I get up at 3:15 in the morning and I'd meditate for 3 hours. I'd do yoga for 3 hours, and then I, do my thing and go out into the world. So like I was really strict with my diet, what I did. I just, and I was still doing courses and living life and traveling, but I was really like, I hadn't opened Pandora's box. I hadn't been near a bloke. I hadn't done any of that. And there's a reason for that, because when I'd come out of my last relapse, the people that I was involved with were filming me when I was drugged, fucked, in my most worst states. And if you can imagine being in your most shameful, degrading, despicable states and someone filming you doing disgusting, degrading, despicable things and you not knowing about it and you being so off your face. And then one of my mates showed me this video and early on in the piece, and that's why I just went, I don't trust men. I don't trust anything, and I'm staying away from men, because it humiliated me. Like, I was so ashamed. Like, it was horrible. Anyway, I was like that for about 11 and a half years till I wanted to have sex again. And I was too scared to have sex straight. And I thought, you know what, I'll just have a drink. Because I thought, I won't use coke. That sends me crazy. I won't use heroin because, whatever. And I picked up a drink to take the edge off. And initially it was fine. It was okay. It was just the weekends. But then it became every day. And, like I was working a corporate job and I was, drinking a bottle of vodka every day. And I was a high functioning alcoholic, but it was bad, and I was losing my mental health again, bad, like really bad. And so what ended up happening was I was still in touch with my mates in the fellowship, and they were like, come back to a meeting. And I was like, I can't, like I just felt like one of these chronic relapses, as they label them, even though I'd spent most of my adult life clean, but when I relapse, I don't, no half measures avail. I go out. So I didn't want to come back, So I anyway, look, fast forward, I came back and then I used to think an alcoholic was nothing on a junkie. I thought, bedwetters were lightweights compared to us. But I got to tell you, they're not. Because I remember when I didn't drink and then I'd pick up for a day, and it was so hard to just drive past the bottle shop. Like with using heroin or coke, I'd have to line up the dealer, I'd have to get the darts, the fits. It was all premeditated. With a drink, I could just drive past the bottle shop and go, I want a drink, and just, and it's done. So I did that. I got sober for a year, drank for a night. Sober for a year, drank for a night. Then, of course, COVID hit and I went, I can't, I didn't want to drink anymore. I picked up actually heroin after 22 and a half years. I hadn't picked up heroin. And I remember walking in Redfern and someone said, mate, there's some really good gear. And they chucked me a bit. And I didn't say no. And I went home and I snorted it. And even though I went, this is shit. It's not like the old pink rocks or the brown beige that was around in my day. I picked it up and then ran with it. And I picked up and used for a month. And I remember after a month I had a habit, and I'm in my 50s, and a habit in your 50s is not pretty. And so then I got on the bube. But what that did was it made me completely turn off alcohol, not desire. Every time I smell alcohol now, I don't want it. But the point before this recovery is I was at the point where I was telling my girlfriend I was going to jump off the gap. But what I was scared of was that I was going to survive, and either be a paraplegic or wreck my face. Because I was still about ego. I don't want to, I'll go out, mate, but don't fucking wreck the face. This face too pretty to work. Anyway, and so my choice was going back to meetings or killing myself. And I hated both those options. And my girlfriend, Ronnie, love her to bits. She's been my bestie for over 3 decades, and I love that woman.
Mm.
And she said, come up here. And she lived up in Byron. And I said, all right, I'll come up for a week. And I came up here for 3.5 weeks, and that was nearly a year and 10 months ago. And then I I didn't want to get clean, but I didn't know what to do. And she'd be going, you're coming to a meeting tonight. And I didn't want to. I was too stone ringing wet. I was too ashamed. Here's another recovery. I've been won 6 times before. All my ego was invested in it, and I was sick as a dog. And someone suggested to go into a rehab, and I'd never done that. So, I'd done detoxes or on the street because I was hardcore.
Yeah.
Anyway, or I thought, I am a resilient motherfucker, but I'm not that hardcore. But anyway, so I stayed at her place for 3.5 months. I did a thing called the Core Program online, and I thought, what's this going to do, but it fucking really helped me. Just those 3.5 days of doing groups, learning about the physiological, the mental, emotional, doing little routines, things like screaming into a pillow, sitting with your feelings, because what I do is I deflect with humor. If I'm hurting, the louder I am, there's survival mechanisms that I've learned as a kid. If I'm hurting, I deflect with humor, I deflect with aggression, or I'm in your face, so you'll back the fuck off, and so that's, I've got a lot of things that I do to protect myself. But anyway, I did that program, and I don't know what happened, because during that program, I don't know where it happened, I stopped feeling depressed. I went off the antidepressants, and I didn't tell anyone, of course, but I just did it because I always run my own race. I love it. I love a good shortcut. Anyway, I ran my own race, and then and then I went to and then I stopped wanting to kill myself. And I don't know when that happened. And slowly but surely, I started to think clearly again, not that clearly, but enough, and then one of the pivotal moments was one of the exercises was to write a letter to my young self. And I remember writing this letter to my young self and visualizing her and letting her know that I would never let her down again, and that I would love her and I would honor her. And because that's not what I'd ever done. So that changed, and someone suggested I go to a rehab up around here. So I went there, and really, I didn't really want to go, but I didn't know what else to do. I really thought I knew too much about recovery. I thought I knew everything. You couldn't tell me anything. I wasn't teachable. I've been through the steps a few times. I know what to do. Like, I hated standing up in the 1 to 90, and over the years I had people go, what are you going to do different this time, Ange? I'd be like, not fucking talk to you. Fuck off if you need to ask me that. And that's how I was, because like, you walk into those rooms, you've been fucking living a shameful life, and you walk into the rooms, the last thing, and you feel even more shame when you feel in there, because, 1 to 90, people get to know you, and you can get to know them. It's like, oh, suck me off, fuck off. I was angry. I was entitled. I was self-righteous. I was all of the above. I was just a ball of feelings, and I had no idea. So I went to the rehab, and I'm not saying that changed my life. It didn't, but it gave me another 3 months of time out.
Yep.
So by the time I left there, and I literally hitched out of that joint, like, I left my bags there and hitched out of that joint back to my girlfriend's place. First thing I did was put a durry into my mouth and make a double shot coffee, because we couldn't smoke. Anyway, but from then, the steps are imprinted in my mind. They're fucking there. Like even when I was out there doing my stuff with yoga and meditation, they're there. The 9th, the 10th, daily inventory, make amends, own your shit, clean your side of the street up. This is the tools I learned over 35 years that were just in there. They're part of my programming. You listen to, how it works and why, I've listened to it a million times. Of course it's going to go in somewhere. So I went from strength to strength. I have an amazing sponsor. I got a job straight away, but I did a meeting, maybe 2 meetings a day for the first probably 13, 14 months of my recovery. Never done that in any of my recoveries. I do a few and then I go, okay, I've got it from here. But what had happened in the time that I was doing yoga and meditation is I found God in that. Not the religious God, but God. So what had happened for me was joining this now with finding God with my yoga world. And I got confused about all that too, saying I am an addict, but I've found something that works for me now. And now merging the two, I was able to build probably the strongest recovery I've ever had, and, like what it did was made me see that at 59 years of age, I'm still repeating the same patterns that I was as a child. Yes, doing the steps helped me deal with the defects that I saw originally, like lying, cheating, stealing, all of that, dishonesty. There's different levels of dishonesty. Like I really got to know myself. At the moment, I'm on my 6th step. And I always think I'm doing the steps wrong. But, what I've realized, I'm just taking the action. That's all that matters. I always feel like I'm doing something wrong because that's my program, So as long as I'm doing some sort of action towards my recovery, then that gives me a bit of esteem. And that's what ended up happening. I found a job. From that job, I was still practicing my yoga. From there, I started a little cleaning business. And that was like a year ago. Then I started to move to bigger and better things. My life opened up quickly. I work helping other people with drug and alcohol addictions. I'm doing my diploma of counselling. I teach a bit of yoga. I do a lot of meetings. I do a lot of service. But my sort of service is for me, when I first came back this time, all I had was a little bit of hope. Yeah. And my hope grew to a little bit of faith. And my faith started to grow to knowing it, and experiencing, and then I started to want to share it. So when I hear someone who's struggling or who's still in using or who's in no man's land or who's in limbo land, it's like I just go, I feel ya, like it just, what it helped me do was connect with myself again, because using was all about a disconnect, and when I go to the meeting and share honestly and be vulnerable, because a lot of the time I was really scared to reveal who I was because you wouldn't like me. And when I came to the rooms, I didn't even know who I was because, like I'd grown up pretending I wasn't a WOG, just so I had no idea who I was. Like if I was with, the gangsters, I'd be talking out the fucking side of my mouth. If I was with the wogs, I'd be fully sigma, how you going? Whatever it was, I could be in a corporate world and be whoever you wanted me to be. So I had to learn who I was again and be comfortable, and get to know myself again. And that's been, I'm not going to say that's been easy because I know when you put down the drugs and that's where the work starts, really, because you really getting to the crux of why you picked up in the first place. Because drugs, alcohol, all that external stuff, you're using all this external shit to try and fix an inside problem. So for me, I go to meetings, whenever I feel like shit, like I go to a meeting, I connect with someone, it connects me to me. And I talk about it honestly. Sometimes I get embarrassed to say, I love crystals, or, I'm a little bit of a hippie, or, whatever it is, but that's my authentic self.
Yeah.
And that is what's always I was scared to reveal to people, because I thought you'd reject me. I thought, you'd abandon me if you knew that I wasn't lovable, because I either felt that I was not enough or too much, and I am what I am, and that is enough, and today my self-esteem has grown, the way I feel about myself to the way I felt, a year and 9 months ago. Like, I just look at it, and that's like another lifetime ago, and I just feel really blessed. But I've had to put the hard yards in, because I've been around for such a long time, and I was a chronic relapser. And my mate always says, don't use that term. But that's, some people think this is a daily program and we place so much emphasis on time up, but it's a fucking daily program. And, if you have wanted to use today, or whatever it is today, and of every minute today, and you haven't, and use the program, gone to a meeting, you're a fucking legend. And that is how the program works. You keep building up a day to a week, and then things start to shift. So I don't know, I feel just really blessed. Before I'd get stressed about one appointment in a week's time. Now my life is so busy. And I got to tell you, one of my I have such a close relationship with my daughters. My youngest daughter doesn't even remember me using. She doesn't even remember smoking cigarettes. So when I decided to pick up alcohol a few years ago, she wasn't worried. But my oldest daughter, who'd seen me overdose and shoot up, was scared, because she was like, I can't do this anymore, Mum. But that actual daughter said to me, like about 6 months ago, and it makes me cry, I'm so proud to have you as my mother, and I wouldn't have wanted any other mother in the world. And you are one of the most resilient motherfuckers I've ever met. And I'm just, that to me is everything. Because, like, my kids are everything to me. But when I used, were they my everything?
No.
No. I put drugs before them. So I don't know. I've cut a lot out there, but I got really nervous about this, because I still, I suppose, my ego still wants to show you that, everything's awesome. But I still go through hard times. I still deal, with anxiety, but I know I've learned how to self-regulate. I yoga and meditation, and I know that I have a solution, and I have tools that I've learned in this program, and I have connections that I've built, up here, and also from over 30 years, that as long as I open and share what's in my head, because this is what my disease is about, is the mental, emotional, not about the using. It's dealing with this motherfucker.
Yep.
I get why 𝐀𝐧𝐿𝐻 shot himself in the fucking head.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so, I still have to deal with this motherfucker, but I'm not alone, and it's the stuff that I keep secret that makes it harder for me. And I have, someone said to me a long time ago, if you can count your mates on one hand, your true mates, you're a fucking rich woman, Angie.
Yeah.
And I can.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Did I get out? Did you, is that, I don't know how long we're, I'm just.
Oh, fucking forever. Nah.
Fuck yeah.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. But you know what, Ange? I've known you for as long as you've been coming to the rooms.
Yeah.
I don't know how long you've been clean. It doesn't matter to me how long you've been clean. You're clean today.
Yeah.
It's never mattered to me how long you've been clean.
I know. It's what I do to myself.
Derek's really funny. Derek always says to me, because we were in rehab together 42 years ago.
Good old Decker.
He forgets that I relapsed.
Love the Decker.
You know, I relapsed in 85, and he goes to me, "You're 40 something now, aren't you?" I go, "No, mate, I relapsed in 85." He goes, "Oh fuck, I forgot about that." We remember our dates. They don't remember our dates. Our friends don't remember our dates.
Yeah.
I detoxed on Rhonda's lounge.
Oh, good old Rhonda.
You know what I mean? 37 and a half years ago, when she was going out with Frankie Malakias.
Oh, Frankie Malakias. Frankie Malakias hired me too. I love Frankie Malakias.
Yeah. Well, you know
And
what I mean?
Rhonda is, you know, honestly, without her,
Mm.
I love her. She
Yeah.
is my soul sister.
Yeah, I remember when she first came in too. I remember when she was a detox. You know, I've been doing this gig a long time, you know, and you know what, mate? We are survivors. There's a reason that we're survivors. It's to carry the message to the addict who still suffers.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says. My whole purpose today is to help other people.
I got to tell you, the thing that helps me, Ronnie, is when I came in, I blamed my family for everything. And what I realized today is my mum and dad, I fucking absolutely adore them and worship where they've come from.
Mm.
And my sisters, like my family, are truly inspirational. And that's not how I felt. And I actually speak Greek today.
I know you do.
I know, but I would not, years ago, I wouldn't speak. And my daughters speak Greek.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
love it, Adede malaka.
And I grew up in a Greek family, you know?
Yeah, I know.
You know, so it's the last 40 years I've grown up with the Greek family, and I got a Greek mum and Makambaro, who's really my brother, Frank. You know, like, it's all about Frankie didn't want to be a Greek. And then when we were kids, we were using together. Then he married a Greek, has a house in Greece. His daughter's being married in Greece.
I know, it's hilarious.
And, Frankie's joke is there's only two people in the world, Greeks and those who want to be Greeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. The Greeks invented everything, mate. Come on.
Yeah. The only thing I thank them for is we won't go down that road today.
Oh, you mean taking it up the ass? Come on.
But you know what, Angie? I love you, darling. And I really, really appreciate you coming on The Truth About Addiction. You're still as beautiful as you ever has been.
Oh, love you, Ronnie.
The reality is, darling, your biggest defect of character was you were so beautiful, you never seen it. That's the sad, that was the beautifulest part. Because everybody wanted to be around Angie. It's true. You're such a beautiful human being, inside and out. It wasn't the outside, it was the inside that attracted us to you. And that's the thing that I always loved about Angie. You've always been a good mate. And I really, really appreciate you coming onto my show, because to me, this show's about helping other people. This show's got no other motive. I don't have any motive but to carry a message of recovery, and I'm sure you're going to help lots of people today. I love you, darling.
Love you, honey.
Be safe.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.